What's the best way to talk to the entities during an EVP session? Let's find out how I do it right now on What the Fetch. Hey Weirdos, I'm Grant. This is the fourth in a series of 5 videos where I discuss EVPs. Here I go again. EVP stands for Electronic Voice Phenomena. It's when you capture a voice or a noise on a recorder that wasn't present at the time it was captured. Do we all have this by now? Yes? This, for me, is the most important aspect of doing an EVP session. As paranormal investigators, we're basically in the business of interdimensional customer service. While we do encounter other types of hauntings, typically we're dealing with intelligent human entities. And the most important thing to remember when dealing with intelligent human entities is that they're just that, human. And their behavior covers the same spectrum as us living folks. Some aren't the brightest bulbs, and some are just plain jerks. Just like living people. But most are good. I mean, I could go to, say, the grocery store, pick up some tater tots, of course, and interact with several people along the way without incident. This is usually how it goes when we interact with human entities. However, there is a time and place to be stern as long as you clean up the mess afterwards. But most people respond best to respect, thoughtfulness, and kindness. Who knew? I find it best to try to create a relationship of trust, peace, and fun. Fun, you say? In a paranormal investigation? But it's supposed to be dark and scary and brooding. Actually, it's not. Light, fun conversation leads to comfort. Comfort equals cooperation, and cooperation means results. Amazingly, this works with the living and the dead. Give it a shot. Now, if someone is actually out and about doing paranormal investigation, they have to at least be open to the idea that there may be an unseen entity there in the room with them. So let's not pretend they aren't. Let's talk to them as if they actually might be in the room with us. To accomplish this, I encourage you try the following. Be considerate. Allow the entities about 3 times as long as it would take a living person to answer the question. Think of it less as a conversation and more like you're writing a letter to a pen pal. I always like to offer as much information to the entity as I'm expecting from the entity. If I want to know how many kids they have, I will first tell them how many kids I have. For example, I might say, I have a lovely wife and 3 boys. Do you have a family? It's simply how you build trust. Next, speak to them in the present tense. This is a hard habit for many investigators to break. They talk to the entities as if they don't exist anymore. This can be terribly confusing for them, especially if we're in there with the belief that they're actually in the room with us. How awkward would it be if I came up to you and asked, did you have brown hair? Were you married when you were alive? Did you like tater tots? It's weird, right? We want to avoid confusion in order to build that relationship of trust with the entity. Instead say, do you have brown hair? Are you married? Do you like tater tots? The rhetorical question, I guess. We continually expect them to manipulate the equipment in the room with us in the present tense, yet we think of them and talk to them as if they're in the past tense. That's really odd. Next, speak to their time period. Try to get a sense of what time period these entities may have lived in, and keep your speech as timeless as possible. For example, don't say, yo dog, what's up? Anyone from like the 1990s back would have no idea what you're talking about. Not that anyone still knows what you're talking about. Instead say, how are you? Don't overdo it either and say, how doth thou farest? Yes? As modern entities might not grasp that one. If you have to, favor the past in your language, as subsequent generations are usually aware of the way people used to talk, but previous generations have no idea how people are going to talk in the future. The next should be a given. Speak to them in their language. I always found it odd that when people were trying to contact an Italian entity, for instance, decide to speak English? Newsflash, not everybody speaks English. Would you really do this to a living person? Would you really try to speak to them in a language they don't understand? Guys, it's simple. Find someone who can speak to the entity in their language or use translation software. It's really easy to find these days. You have to be willing to meet them on their turf, or at least halfway. Now, I am aware of the theory that they're able to just sense or detect our intentions despite the language barrier. While that is a beautiful concept, it's not one I found to be true based on my experience. I've captured a number of EVPs in different languages, from Polish to Algonquin. I needed a translator to understand what they were saying, so I have to assume that the entities need a translator to understand what I'm saying. Next, be honest. This one drives me nuts. Be honest with the entities. It's not hard. Be crystal clear about your motivation for contacting them. You can't expect them to trust you if you're hiding something. And please, for the love of all that's holy, do not make promises you can't keep just to get a reaction. Please. It's rude, and one of my biggest pet peeves in the field. They aren't trick ponies waiting for you to show up so they can do backflips for you. It's give and take, not just take. Now, occasionally there will be a time where you have to provoke or put your foot down. Usually when a client or their child are being pestered. And that's fine to do. That's how you would treat a living person that is exhibiting the same behavior. But you have to follow through. You have to clean up. You can't just egg the entity on and then leave the home and the client with an agitated entity. Oh, and for heaven's sakes, don't ever say, if you give us a sign of your presence, we'll leave. It's a lose-lose situation. Either they won't give you a sign, or they will, and you'll have to make good on your word and leave right as the activity starts. Just don't do it. Most importantly, keep it positive, light, and fun. Most people naturally want to join in on a fun, relatable conversation rather than an interrogation on death, dying, and the afterlife. Yes, it's perfectly fine to tease each other and laugh during an investigation. Shocking, I know. Shocking. Scandalous. Yes, scandalous. It seems that many of the entities we speak with don't realize that they're dead. Talking about their death could easily confuse them. Remember, our goal is to try to connect with them, not cause them pain. In my experience, every time I have a great interaction with a supposed intelligent human entity, and I mention their death or dying, the conversation ends immediately. Now, could it be due to the mental whiplash of them realizing that they're not alive anymore? Could it be because there's something preventing them from speaking about it? I don't know, but what I do know is that it ends that stream of communication, and that's counterproductive. So the overlying message here is stop thinking of them as it, and start thinking of them as the people you might meet in any given daily situation. Other than understanding their unique situation, that of not being alive anymore, treat them as you would any other person. And in dealing with other people, being respectful, polite, honest, and engaging goes a lot further than commanding them. Now, this is something I'm very passionate about, guys. And unfortunately, it's a mentality that's rapidly decreasing in the field. As more and more people get engaged in paranormal investigation and ghost hunting, it seems like there's less and less respect for the entities themselves. It's a viewpoint we simply can't afford to lose. It bothers me to see people treating entities, who are just other people, so poorly and for such selfish reasons. Now, I don't care how you investigate the paranormal. Just please don't hurt people along the way, be they living or dead. Learn how to deal with living people, and you'll be a pro at handling the dead. What do you guys think? Do you have any tips for talking to the dead? Leave a comment down below and let us all know. Now, don't forget to like, subscribe, click that notification bell, and share this channel with all your weirdo friends. Thanks for stopping by, guys. Stay weird. We're basically in the business of international